Hello, you guys. Today we'll be continuing the analysis on Frankenstein. So we'll be analyzing chapters 3 and 4. Now, if you wanna, start from the beginning, I have chapters 1 and 2, and of course the letters. So I have analysis on that. Now, today we'll be starting with the 4 characters, and this is a really important and specific part of the novel because it sheds light on many elements. So as I explained in the previous video, what 4 characters are basically 2 characters who have opposite characteristics, and these characteristics contrast each other and make each other, show more. Now let's speak about this. So first we have Elizabeth and Victor, who are obvious 4 characters, and I spoke about this and what makes them compatible. Now we add Henry to the equation. Now, why do we add Henry to the equation? Because he gives us a specific significance. He sheds light on the theme of passive women. Now, let's begin with analyzing each character first. First, we have Elizabeth. She is the classic romantic. She's spiritual, and she's calm, and she's loving, and she's selfless, and she's devoted to her family. And she is described as a saintly soul who shone like a shrine dedicated lamp in our house, in our peaceful home. Meaning that she, in this simile, is compared to the lamb, like a shrine dedicated lamb, using the comparison tool, which shows how selfless she is. And like Henry, she's a romantic representation. She's kind and tender. Now, the difference between Henry and Elizabeth is that Henry is an intellectual. Now, not in a scientific way like Victor, more of a literary way, but he's intellectual. Now, why? What makes Elizabeth and Henry different? Now, Henry is the male version of Elizabeth because he has an ambition, because he's a male. Therefore, he has all of these opportunities. He has this responsibility, whereas Elizabeth's responsibility is completely different. Her responsibility contrasts Henry's responsibility because she, as a female, has the job of taking care of her family members and the household, whereas Henry has to build a career for himself, which this is the gender. The gender lottery is what differentiates these 2 characters. But what they're trying to tell us is that Henry is the male version of Elizabeth. And as we know, he's a noble spirit, and he writes composed stories, and he composes songs, and he's interested in the moral relations of things. Now, what makes him common to Victor is that they're both intellectual, they're passionate, they're ambitious, but Victor, he's self-centered, he's narcissistic, and he's smitten with the thirst of knowledge. He never has enough, which ultimately leads him to his downfall. And then we know that he's a unique person, he's quite eccentric, and he represents the Enlightenment period as he embodies all of their characteristics. And through Victor, through his downfall, Mary Shelley is able to criticize the Enlightenment ideology. Now, as we know, Victor is able to have such close relationships with Elizabeth and Henry because they are such selfless characters, whereas Victor is such a selfish character. So let us proceed. So now chapter 3. What happens in chapter 3? So firstly, Elizabeth contracts scarlet fever, and while she's sick, ill, Caroline, Victor's mother, is taking care of her, and she ends up contracting the fever, and she passes away. And then at the age of 17, Victor goes to attend university at Ingolstadt, and he meets his mentors, Professor Kemp and Professor Waldman. And Professor Kemp makes it clear to him that the study of alchemy is a waste of energy. By criticizing the amount of time Victor spent on it, he tells him that he wasted all of his time and he has to start from scratch. And Victor is encouraged and convinced to pursue studies in sciences after watching Professor Waldman's lecture in chemistry. So as we can see, Professor Waldman and Professor Kemp, their approaches towards Victor contrast each other. Now, this is an intense analysis. So basically, this chapter showcases that Victor is mourning the death of his mother, and his approach to mourning this death is through bombarding himself with work. And what we can interpret from this is that how Victor deals with his problems in general in life is through bombarding himself with work in order to not think about this. And now it's also considered foreshadowing for the future events that he's going to have to deal with in the rest of the novel. And this quote, I will pioneer a way, explore unknown powers, and unfold to the world's deepest mysteries of creation. So basically, this quote foreshadows the event where Victor will create the monster, because this can be conveyed through the language used or the diction used, because the phrase deepest mysteries of creation indicates that his discoveries will be related to creating something, to a creation, which is associated with creating life, of course, and also foreshadows the fact that he will create life soon, as well as it explores the dangers of unbound ambitions, as well as criticizing the Enlightenment period. And now this quote, she died calmly, and her countenance expressed affection even in death. I need not describe the feeling of those whose dearest ties are rent by that most irreparable evil, the void that presents itself to the soul, and the despair that is exhibited on the countenance. So basically, this is like describing when Victor's mother, Caroline, was passing away. And she does so silently. And it shows that even life is so unpredictable, so unfair, and also just sheds light on the theme of passive woman. And even when she's dying, she remains quiet, and how submissive women were at that time. And Victor is flooded with powerful blow of grief, and the grief is highlighted through the countenance. The despair and anguish are visible on his face, since, as we know in literature, the eyes are the key to the soul. And opposingly, the mother's eyes are calm and accepting, trying to soothe her son's grief, even though she was the one who's actually dying and going through that pain. And after this experience, he was intrigued into finding the concept of life and death, which may foreshadow his next step. And these steps being the creation of the monster. Now, and as I previously mentioned in the slide before, Professor Waldman and Cramp are seen as foil characters, as they have completely different approaches towards Victor. After he had told them about his interest in study of in alchemy, moreover, Professor Waldman is interested in alchemy, whereas Professor Cramp is not interested in these old sciences, these outdated sciences, whereas he's more interested in the modern sciences. And a discussion question that can be discussed from this question is Victor responsible for his actions or fate? Because as we know, this Victor keeps saying that this is his fate, that creating the monster was his fate. Is it not? And why is chapter 3 so significant to this? Is because it's showing us the direction that is leading him to creating the monster. And in page 28, Victor changes the narration from first person to third person, suggesting that he's trying to distance himself from the character he was, because now, as we know, he's telling Robert his story, where now he changes the narrative, which shows that he is feeling remorse and guilt for his actions, because he's telling us his story. While he's doing that, we know that when someone changes the narrative, he's kind of talking about his past self. He's kind of disowning his past self, which by disowning his past self, you are able to understand that he's embarrassed of his actions, and he does not want his current self to be associated with these actions. Now, we're going to analyze some figurative language. So I was like the Arabian who had been buried with the sand. So basically, this is the simile that uses the comparison to to an Arabian who had been buried in the sand, buried himself from sleep, which she considered painful labor. Why? Because this just shows the amount of work Victor is doing while he's creating the monster, and how much he has to sacrifice his time and his health and his mental health in order to achieve this goal that he is willing to sacrifice everything for. And as we know, Victor's favorite thing is glory. This is what he wants, not the money, not the fame, but the glory. And he's willing to sacrifice anything for that. And Victor sees this new science as the enemy to proceed to his own preconceived science, as vows to prove that the alchemists were right. He says that he felt as if those new teachings were like a palpable enemy to be reckoned with, and he pledges to himself to prove his dictators wrong, that detractors wrong, by saying, far more will I achieve. We can conclude that Victor is stubborn yet determined individual, because we know that mostly everyone's been advising him against alchemy. However, instead of listening to them, he is contradicting them, and he is viewing everything else, like all these modern sciences that everyone is working with, as the wrong, and he is still stuck to alchemy, which shows that he's really, really stubborn. However, we can just see this dedication he has to prove everyone wrong, and how much he believes in himself. He believes in himself to the point where he reaches arrogance. Since he wanted to prove his detractors wrong, yet it can also be viewed as determination and confidence. Reason being that he won't give up in what he believes in, and he has confidence when it comes to his academic. So now another quote: "Thus ended a day memorable to me. It decided my future destiny." So basically, this is actually foreshadowing, because we know from the diction, my future destiny. So basically, future is basically the equivalent of foreshadowing. And this quote was said at the end of chapter 3, after Waldman advised Victor to study all the branches of philosophy, because this indicates that Waldman was a source of Victor's motivation and excitement to create the future, which makes him kind of an indirect accomplice to the monster's creations and the murder of many innocent people, because he motivated Victor. He's the one who kind of helped him pursue alchemy kind of way, because he was kind of the only character that was kind of into alchemy as well, whereas he knew where to stop and Victor did not know where to stop. So maybe he can be perceived as kind of a type of motivation which made him an indirect accomplice. Now, chapter 4. So Frankenstein prioritizes his work and studies while disregarding his social life and family members. By Frankenstein, I mean Victor. He is fascinated by the creation of life and the human body, its decay and its creation. So basically, he's fascinated by all of these things, which continue to foreshadow his future actions. And he excels at what his professors taught him after rigorous work in an attempt to discover the secret of life. Whereas he cannot be seen in his apartment, Victor starts trying to give life to a creature. He starts collecting human body parts for his work and becomes obsessed with his reach. Frankenstein neglects his family and friends and dives into uncovering the mystery of life, becoming pale, exhausted, lonely, and obsessed. Now, we're going to analyze. So now we're going to analyze this quote. "The stars often disappeared in the light of the morning while his eye was engaged yet in my laboratory." So basically, this is a hyperbole because it's a lot of exaggeration. And he describes the absurd amount of hours he spent working on his experiment creation, which again sheds light on his extreme determination, and again also on the theme of unbound ambition, which is leading him to his downfall, and also shedding light on him being a Byronic hero. Stars disappearing indicates the nighttime has come to an end. It's daytime, indicating that he's been working overnight and not sleeping instead he will be at the laboratory working on his creation instead of having a good night's sleep. And as well as Victor does not give Walton details on how he created the monster. And this is kind of really interesting because he doesn't do that, because as we know, he doesn't share like details because he is telling Waldman the story. And as we know, Waldman is another scientist. Therefore, he has background on science and the science of creation and maybe even alchemy. Therefore, he does not give him these secrets in order for Waldman to not create the monster himself, because as we know, Waldman also has this drive, this ambition, which will lead him to his downfall. And actually the reason Victor is telling him his tale is to prevent him from having the same fate that Victor had. After so much time spent in painful labor. Now, this is an extremely powerful quote because it can be perceived as a comparison between natural labor, where a female gives birth to a child, and the creator being Victor giving life to his creation, which is Victor creating the monster. Furthermore, it fits into the theme of production versus reproduction, or creator versus creation, which is basically showing how unnatural the thing Victor was doing was, because this is not the way you create a creature, as well as it's giving Victor the same power God has, which is giving life. So Victor is now playing the role of God, which is against romanticism, against nature, which is making him make one of the biggest mistakes ever. Now, another quote: "Learn from me, if not by precepts, at least by example, how dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge." Now, much happier the man is who believes his native town to be the world than who aspires to be greater than his nature will allow. So basically, this is saying how Victor is overtaking and transgressing the laws of nature by playing the role of God and giving life. He is transgressing the role, his role as a scientist, and transgressing the rules of nature, which is leading him to his ultimate downfall, and which makes his story a tale of awareness. It's a tale of awareness, like the Ancient Mariner, and now Victor Frankenstein. Therefore, this quote fits under Romanticism, as its purpose is opposing knowledge and encourages believing in the nature of things, which is a romantic ideology. Moreover, it's Victor warning Robert Walton from committing the same sins or mistakes he did. That sin being that he tried to play God's role by giving life to a corpse and transgressed the laws of nature. This quote gives readers the ability to identify how Victor actually feels about his actions, so we get a better perspective on his point of view. These feelings being guilt and regret. In addition, it can be interpreted as a message from the novel's author, Shelley, because as we know, Shelley constantly attempts to give readers messages through her characters, through Victor. Furthermore, it showcases how much Victor has evolved as a character due to his experiences and how he shifted from the Enlightenment mentality to romantic mentality. Moreover, a parallelism between the Ancient Mariner, the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and Victor Frankenstein, as they are both telling others who are on the path of transgressing the laws of nature their cautionary tale. Finally, this quote can be interpreted as a message from Shelley to her 19th century audience. So as we know, so you can deduce on this quote, do not take the role of God by transgressing the laws of nature. And this is Shelley trying to give a message to her audience that they should adopt the romantic ideology instead of the Enlightenment period ideology, because through Victor Frankenstein and alluding to the Ancient Mariner. Now, the creation of the monster is not described, making it a mystery which can be illustrated as a Gothic element, because as we know, also there's many Gothic elements embedded in this novel. And now another quote analysis: I succeeded in discovering the cause of generation and life. Nay, more, I became myself capable of bestowing animation upon lifeless matter. So basically, this quote is re-emphasizing that Victor is seeing himself as God and he is playing the role of God. And this quote, Shelley displays the theme of the use of knowledge for evil purposes through Victor's action, as Victor is using his knowledge to surpass the laws of nature and take God's place. In addition, she is criticizing the Enlightenment period who highly value the pursuit of knowledge by showcasing the fact that having access to too much knowledge and overindulging yourself in knowledge can lead to its abuse and misusing it for the wrong purposes. Criticizing the ideologies and beliefs of those who are of the Enlightenment period, she is promoting romanticism at the same time. So basically, while she's criticizing the Enlightenment period, she's promoting the romantics indirectly, because the romantics have opposing beliefs and their nature is completely different to the ones of the Enlightenment period, as they believe that they should believe in what's already known and the past instead of evolving and gaining more and more information. Now, Victor thought he was doing a service by creating a new human. He says, a new species which blessed me as its creator and source. Many happy and excellent natures would owe me their being to me. I might be in the process of time, although I now found it impossible to renew life where death had apparently devoted the body to corruption. So basically, this quote goes back to the theme of learning and the use of knowledge for good or evil purposes. This quote also reveals Victor's mental state, how he had built up his own ego, believing the creatures he would create would revere him. So it makes the human seem like Victor seem like a human god, and it just re-emphasizes on the point how Victor really, really wants this glory and how much he has an ego, which led him to his downfall, and which makes us able to identify him as the Byronic hero he is. And of course, the most important message is that he should not be trying to play the role of God, and he should not be adopting the dangers of adopting the ideology of the Romantic period. So now I'll be doing another video on chapters 5 and 6. I truly hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you join my Google Classroom in order to have access to more notes, because their notes are all there. And, I have access extra notes. And of course, you have access to my email where you'll be able to ask me any questions you want to ask me. And of course, if you do not know, also you can email me any help with you need with your essays or any work with English literature, and I will be willing to help. So thank you so much for watching, and I really, really do hope you liked this video. Thank you so much. Bye, guys, and please subscribe.